and gentlemen, Panzer here, and today we're taking a look at Helldivers. Now this is a PlayStation exclusive title, so if you are a PC gamer, sorry, this is not one that is available for you just yet, but who knows, maybe in the future it might be. It is still kind of a fun little game. It is a top-down shooter, and it is one that has a fairly unique personality. It does have a lot of Starships Troopers vibe to it, and, well, friendly fire seems to be one of the things that is kind of a big deal in the game. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a main feature, but it is something that definitely plays a part, and when playing with friends it can lead to some pretty hilarious moments. Not surprising, because the game does come from the same developers as Magica. That would be Arrowhead Studios, and that is another game where, well, killing your friends by accident, or sometimes, you know, not so accidentally, can actually lead to some fun moments on its own. So, it is a top-down shooter, and it features a lot of different weapons and a lot of little things called stratagems. Now, these are very similar to Magica's spell system, where you sort of combine runes together and you make spells, but in Helldivers, the stratagems are simply codes that you enter in using the D-pad, and they help you do all sorts of things, from dropping supplies, calling in airstrikes, artillery barrages, or even walking titans and APCs if you so choose. There's a very wide selection of weapons, from assault rifles and SMGs up to grenade launchers, rocket launchers, and even laser-based weaponry as well. There's also a fair degree of customization in terms of cosmetics. You've got different armor parts and capes and so on, to give you a Helldiver a fairly unique look. But the overall gameplay itself is quite intriguing, because despite the frustrations of taking on increasingly difficult missions on different planets, playing with friends can always lead to each mission kind of playing out very differently, especially if you're not particularly good at it, as myself and my friend are. You can actually more or less accidentally kill each other along the way. So the game plays out in a form of galactic campaign, which resets itself every time the human faction, that being Super Earth that you play for, has successfully defeated all of the enemies. Now, the campaign itself is against 3 other factions: the Cyborgs, the Robotic Illuminates, and the Bugs, which you can see we are playing against right here. Now, each faction features different types of enemies. There are many different traits with each faction. For example, the Bugs mainly feature melee combat and ambush tactics, as well as very large and heavily armored beetle-like characters. And the Cyborgs have a lot of very bullet-based and explosive-based weapons. And then the Illuminates have sort of teleporting robots which have shields and so forth, but are not very heavily armored. So there are a lot of different enemy types to take a look at, and every single faction plays differently. So you're never really going to find yourself fighting the same things over and over, even though it may appear that way. Now, as for the actual campaign, there are also dynamic events, and there's also a progression system, things you can unlock, different weapons, different stratagems, and all of these are available on different planets of increasing difficulty. So there's always a drive to go after a different planet, because there's a different thing you can unlock, and so on. Now, you can play in a team of up to 4 players, but it is entirely possible to play most of the missions with just yourself or one other friend. Of course, playing with a full team of 4 is highly recommended for some of the more difficult missions, particularly if you intend on using things like the APC, which is a stratagem you can call in once per mission. That gives you a vehicle you can travel around in, which has a decent amount of armor, but it also has 3 weapon points, which can be manned by the full team. This can be pretty devastating against most enemy types, but it does require players to actually man the points, because you can't switch seats from inside the vehicle. And of course it requires a decent enough driver. Of course, not being particularly good at the game and causing problems for the rest of your team, it does seem to add at least a little bit of spice to the individual missions themselves. Now, the game itself may not be too impressive to a lot of you graphically, but it does have a unique art style, and I think the theme carries over quite nicely, graphically anyway. However, there are some problems. Mainly because this is an online-only game, and I do believe you require PlayStation Plus to actually play it, and that of course is a subscription service. I could be wrong about that, but I do believe it does require it. Additionally, there are some connectivity issues. But if you are joining public matches, this may not be as big a problem when trying to join, because there are a lot of games going on at once. This is a pretty well-populated game. However, joining friends does pose some problems, mainly because when you are trying to join friends, there are the same sort of connectivity issues, and of course not everybody has friends always available. I did encounter some issues when trying to join my friend who was already on his ship, but the friends list hadn't updated to reflect that, which is a bit of a problem. What I think may actually be the issue with the game is that the server lists or even the game lists just don't refresh fast enough, and if players have just signed into the game, it doesn't reflect accordingly. It does also appear to be the same problem as what public matchmaking has. The developers have already said if you're trying to join a match that has 3 out of 4 players, chances are it'll be full by the time you try and join, but the game hasn't reflected that yet. So that could be an issue too. Which, frankly, for an online-only game, seems to be a pretty big problem. It does cripple the gameplay pretty significantly when you have to keep re-logging or restarting the game simply to just make it work. Just to get into a match with a friend of mine, we actually restarted the game I think about 5 or 6 times just to get it to work. That doesn't sound particularly promising for an online-only game, I will say. And I'm hoping that this problem does get fixed at some point, but it will probably take some time. So it is a pretty big issue with this game. However, the gameplay itself, when it decides to actually work, seems to be quite worth it, and once you're with a friend, I have not encountered any disconnects or even any lag issues, so it does actually work fairly well once you get it going. So if you're willing to put up with those problems, this could actually be a fairly worthwhile title, especially if you can get a full team of 4 going. So, yeah, there you go. That is Helldivers, ladies and gentlemen, made by Arrowhead Studios. It is a PlayStation 4 exclusive for now, with a couple of DLC packs, but it is only $20, so it's one of those games you could probably pick up for a fraction of the price and spend a fair amount of hours on it with some friends. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Panzer, and I'll see you next time.